Hey guys, it's Slamming Rush. It has been ages since I've seen an actual good quality light tank guide out there posted for basically the layman. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be trying to give you some tactics that you can employ in your actual World of Tanks games, so pragmatic advice that you can employ when you're playing your light tanks to try to increase your team's and your own chances of winning. So with this video, I hope I accomplish that. Enjoy. The first thing you need to understand to be a great light tank driver is that your tank is, generally speaking, weaker in a one-on-one fight than every other tank on the battlefield. What I mean by that is you have worse armor, worse firepower, and worse HP than every other tank you're going to meet. And so what happens is you have to rely on the strengths of a light tank. And in high-tier gameplay, the main strengths of a light tank don't have to do with view range, they don't have to do with camo, they have to do with your fucking amazing speed that you're going to be given, because you decided to play a high tier light. And so what's going to happen is you have to make all your plays with the knowledge that you have to use the mobility of the tank. That's your only pragmatic strength. Some people will say you should use your view range. Lights have a bunch of view range and you can use them, but the reality is if you're trying to outspot people, generally speaking, heavies have the same view range as lights. And so, their main strength definitely doesn't come in view range. They have view range, but you're going to find the mobility as your strongest asset as a light tank driver. Now that you understand how people will kind of go about building light tank tactics in their lights, the question is, how do you use it? Because the basis is obviously mobility. So there's a bunch of different ways you can use mobility in World of Tanks. The main one that a lot of people get kind of stuck in the trap of is scouting. So scouting in World of Tanks is hyper useful. It's very great if you can figure out where the enemy team are going, because obviously this is you're playing with random people who do random things, and generally speaking, you can't predict that all heavy tanks will go to the heavy tank side of a map. And so, for example, knowing that a heavy tank is going to scout all your camping TDs can be very useful. And so scouting's hyper important at the beginning of the game. But the thing is, a lot of people get caught up in the trap of trying to have epic games every single time they play. And so what you want to do is, if you're a scout and you're trying to figure out your opening play with the mindset that it's okay to spot 2 or 3 people. You don't have to spot the entire enemy team. Just figure out where 1 or 2 or 3 tanks are going, and even if it's just an enemy light, that information is still useful. And if you figure that out without losing any HP, that's way more valuable than Suis scouting, which is a mistake that everyone makes. And so being patient with your scouting, super valuable. What you'll find is that if you can stay alive throughout an entire light tank game, you'll consistently be getting more and more spotting damage, because you're going to be on the front lines. You're going to have a 445 meter view range, generally speaking. You're going to be spotting tank destroyers towards the end of the game, and a lot of your spotting damage will come on camping full HP TDs towards the end of the game, not heavy tanks that are driving into position. So you understand the theory to scouting. How do you actually implement it? In this case, this clip right here, we're on the map Live Oaks, and what I'm doing is I'm trying to figure out where the entire enemy heavies are going. They've got a bunch of heavies, and I want to figure out exactly where they're going into the city. And so what I've done is I've come up to this house right here, and that's going to allow me to spot heavies who are driving into position. Now, in this case, something super fucking random happens. A Object 277 has decided to yeet himself into B4, and not many heavies in tier 10 actually take this position. So what I've done is I've spotted him, but because of his position and because I'm lit, I won't be able to spot the rest of the heavies who are going into the city. And this is the important part of scouting. This is how you don't become a Suis scout. It's you're lit, your position's exposed, you've spotted, in this case, actually a really useful, I've spotted a 277 who's in a really random position. It's actually really useful information, and that's good enough. You have to be okay with good enough sometimes, because if I were to try to spot more people, anyone driving into the city would have stopped and shot at me, and then I would have died, and I wouldn't have been able to be useful for the rest of the game. In this case, the 277 being in a weird position, spotting him actually helped our team a lot, because we ended up getting him killed, and that type of play is super, that's valuable. You don't need to get yourself killed when scouting in a light tank. Another example of a perfect scouting run right off the bat, and then a bit of a mistake afterwards, is this guy in his EBR. I downloaded this replay off Watt Replays, and what he's deciding to do is he's trying to figure out what is going to the 1-2 line. Now that's a perfectly reasonable play, especially when the enemy has 5 TDs and then a bunch of heavies. And so he's coming to crest the middle ridge. This is perfect, and he does a lot of good right here. He spots the IS-7, the RHM, and the FV. You can see the FV's he fired at him, the IS-7's right there. This is all a bunch of super useful information that, if he hadn't made this run, he wouldn't have. Now, my advocation is to stop right here. You don't need to re-engage, because you found the FV, you found the IS-7, and then by going for another run, it's he gets shot by the RHM. Now, in this case, he gets really unlucky and he actually gets lit on fire, but the beginning, the opening scouting run was absolutely perfect. He got all the information he needed. He found out where a top tier TD, a top tier heavy, and a top tier light were going. And it's like, that as a light tank is a perfect opening play. That's where you just need to stop for like 30 seconds, and then you can like reassess the situation, go for more scouting runs when people aren't ready to shoot at you. Like that opening scouting run, perfect. Don't mess it up by trying to make more. After you've done your initial scouting, on most games, you're going to find that there's not a whole lot of opportunity to continue scouting because everyone will be in positions ready to shoot back at you. So what you want to do is you want to figure out how to be a major pain in the ass for like as many heavy tank drivers as possible. Find a position that allows you to get to the side of people, shoot them in the sides when they're not looking at you, and like turn their gun towards you to give your teammates the opportunities to hit them. Probably the most effective thing you can do in this type of position is just to be like focus on surviving. What you want to do is you want to shoot people's tracks and do damage to them while they're looking away, kind of aiming for modules. If you can set people on fire or like actually permatrack people, you're golden, because it's going to make it really easy for your teammates to take advantage of the fact that the enemy tank is like being harassed from multiple angles. And so that's definitely the best way. If you're trying to win like a side, focus on finding a position that's an off angle where you can shoot people in the side, get their tracks, get their engines, things like that. That's going to be how you can be a super effective like light tank driver towards the middle of a game. So now that the theory's out of the way, how does this actually play out in real life? So in this case, we're in the T100. This is the Live Oaks game. We know that the Object 277 just yeeted himself into B4, and because he's kind of in the open, I'm going to choose to engage him. Now, as a light tank, what you want to do is you want to choose a position that you can shoot someone once or twice and then disengage. Now, I'm going to make a bit of a mistake here, but you can see by coming to this position while the 277's looking away, I put a shot into him, and this is where the quote mistake happens, because the 277 sees me and he sees a light tank that's an easy kill and just decides to drive into me. So what I do is I see him YOLOing into me. I'm using my mobility to kind of force him to come around this building. That forces him to actually miss his shot. Normally players who make this play are bad anyways, so you can get lucky like that, but we're able to kill him. And this whole time while he was YOLOing me, he actually ends up, you know, that he's not fighting other teammates, so there is advantage to that. Now, in this case, we killed the full HP, basically all the 277, but what I notice is that the other 277 isn't looking at me, and so this is actual pragmatic flanking. We put a shot into the 277, who's not aware, and the key here is we're not going to stick around for other shots. You can see the 277 now knows I'm here, and the E100 is looking towards me, so what I want to do is I kind of want to disengage from this flank, and, you know, with that 277 not paying it, like, how do you say it? Putting one or two shots into people is exactly what you need to do. It's enough to distract them and kind of take them out of the fight, and so single shot into the 277 and then disengaging is perfect. Now we're going to basically change the angle. We were going to deal with the U100, but we put a side shot into the 277. And from here, this is basically what you want to be doing in lights. As you can see, this E100 is totally focusing on me, and because of that, it's going to allow a lot of my teammates to get into position. You'd presume the WZs would be shooting at him. They weren't, but just by turning that E100's gun with his massively long turret rotation, it's going to keep him out of the fight, and that allows our team to actually move in, and me being in the city was definitely a major part of us trying to win that flank when we're losing the south of this map. A super common mistake that people make when they try to flank people is they're often way too aggressive when doing it. In the Live Oaks game, I was right up in the city, right in the thick of everything, but for example, on a map like Westfield, there's not a whole lot of flanking opportunities that happen until people start to die and go for your arty. So for example, in this case, he's lost the south side of his map, and enemies are pushing down the zero line going for his arty. He knows that, and so by coming to a position like this, the light tank driver is guaranteeing himself flanking opportunities on people like the Object 140, who will present their sides, which is a large target, you know, at this type of range, to him, which is absolutely fantastic. That's what you'd want to do in a light tank if you don't really have any other safe options. Now, in this case also, because he snuck around the map and no one knew that he was going to be at A6, he's unspotted, there's a Foch 155 who went up to the ridge to put shots towards the Leo, and that Foch has no idea he's here, so he's actually able to get side shots on him, and because the range is so great, you know, and the Foch is a relatively quick TD, he has no risk of getting YOLO'd by the Foch, and so this is the type of play that if you can, is often a really solid play to make, because now the Foch is in the middle of the open, he has his side, if the Foch is reloading, which it looks like he is, the WZ's going to be able to take complete advantage of him, often sort of putting distance between yourself and the enemy so you're unspotted so that you can use your gun is a really solid flanking option, because generally they'll give you their sides if they don't know you're there. The most important thing for a light tank driver to master is end game light tank play, because often what happens is if you're a light tank that's alive towards the end of the game, it's super easy for you to carry the game because you've just got so much mobility available to you. You can teleport to different places on the map and totally catch people out. What you want to focus on developing if you're trying to become a better light tank driver is your ability to find information for your team towards the end of the game. Plays that involve scouting players who aren't spotted yet, like basically full HP campers by the end of the game, give your team so much information that it really allows them to make a lot of plays, and that's the type of thing that will win you way more games as a light tank driver. So the question becomes, how do you go about performing the most important light tank role well? And basically it's really hard to do, because what happens is towards the end of the game, often there's a bunch of tanks that you don't know where they are, and it's your job to figure out where they are so that your heavies don't get surprised by random, full HP grills, for example. So if you look at the enemy team lineup and the map in this case, I noticed that the grill was unspotted. There's also unspotted Artie. A lot of people would go for Artie right here, but the reality is it's like if they've got an unspotted grill, and I also think they have an unspotted T95, you have to figure out where those people are, and likely if they're unspotted, they're camping all game. So I've come up to a bush. This is an unconventional bush, but this bush works because of the way that the enemy team has pushed entirely through the south. I've predicted that a lot of them are just going to be camping on the rails, and so I've come to here to try to spot any rail campers and any TDs who are like in the common TD spot to my left. It looks like there's no one to my left, and so I'm going to come up to here to try to get side shots on the STB1 and the 140, and by doing that play, I actually spotted grills. So this is the type of play. It's like I'm kind of moving to get damage, to get shots on people, but I'm also making the play where I'm trying to look for eyes. I was looking for the grill, and you can see I found the T95 in the common position that you'd expect a tank destroyer to be in. And so with that information, once again, that's good enough. No one in my team is in a position to really shoot at the T95 FV or the grill, and so for me to stick around there, I'll just get wrecked by the STB1 and the Kronvan. And it's small plays like that that will often help your team totally win games. And you can see the T100 light tank got spotted on the map. If I had continued to be where I was, I probably would have been YOLO'd by him. If you're able to consistently put yourself in positions where you're spotting tanks that are integral to the enemy team winning, you're going to find you're going to win way more games. You don't necessarily need to spot hundreds of players like the EBRs in this case, but generally speaking, if you just find players that are in positions that will win the enemy team games and spot them and light them and prevent them from doing damage, you're going to win you're going to see major increases in your win rate. You also want to pay attention to the fact that you can also do damage in lights, because often positions where you find people that are camping, they're not going to be prepared for you, so sometimes you can take advantage of them and shoot them. But really, the main objective of a light tank, especially in the latter half of the game, is going to be finding people that are camping and have been camping all game who are full HP and exposing them for your teammates to absolutely annihilate. The fourth and final kind of light tank tactic that I wanted to touch on is going after Artie. Often what will happen is light tank drivers will go after Artie because they perceive Artie as easy kills. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but it's so frequently the case that Artie is actually really good at defending itself when you're going for it, and 9 times out of 10, if you go after an Artie, it's going to hit you, and you're going to take 500 damage from it, maybe about a third of your hit points if you're in the lower tiers, or, but that's a rule of thumb. So what you have to do is, when you engage Artie, make sure you're unspotted. You don't want to give Artie the chance to one-shot you, or hit you for 50% of your HP. Make sure you're engaging them intelligently. A lot of people just YOLO into Artie and die, kind of like the MX-13105, but you need to make sure you're not doing that. Understand that Arties have guns too. They can miss you and still do 500 damage. Just be really cautious when dealing with Artie, but definitely go after them. They're totally worth killing. It's also super satisfying. And that concludes my light tank guide. I hope this video was helpful. If you want to see more, be sure to hit the like and the subscribe button. I decided not to cover equipment and crew setup because there's a bunch of other videos out there that do. This guide is aimed kind of towards a bit more advanced players who aren't looking, for how to set up their tanks. Trying to give you some actual in-game tactics that will work for you, as opposed to just theories that you'd find on the forums, or telling you to run optics, because everyone knows to run optics on their lights. So yeah, thanks for watching. I hope to see you around. Later guys. Bye.